Hey guys, what's up? GT Frostbite here, and today I am bringing you something a little different. I was watching the dayz or dayz playthrough that the Yogscast are doing, and I thought to myself, wow, this would make a really great book. Well, by great, I mean amusing, funny, I don't know. Well, so what I did was I took one episode of their dayz playthrough and turned it into a book. I took some artistic license and stuff, and if you guys like it, I'll continue doing this. Warning, there is no video for this. This is meant to be done as a audiobook type thing, so you kind of listen to it while doing something else, or immerse yourself in the world that I've kind of created based on what they're doing, and we'll see how this goes. I hope you guys enjoy, and sit back, relax, and listen to my soothing voice show you through post-apocalyptic Russia. Chapter 1. Simon leaned over the side of the ferry, taking in the scent of the salt air. This was it. After years of being away from their home in Russia, Simon and Louis were finally on their way back to the motherland. It was a gray, overcast day, like it always was in their homeland. The sun was always surrounded by clouds, turning even the brightest of days into a dreary haze. "Simon, look! Land!" Louis was vigorously pointing off into the distance where a smudge on the horizon was just barely visible. "We're almost there." Simon didn't say anything, even though the excitement was bubbling up inside of him, like it does in a child on Christmas morning at the first sight of presents. After many minutes had passed, Simon could start to make out the buildings of the town. Somewhere. It was called Somewhere, the place where they were set to dock at. More time went by, and Simon could see the oil tanks by the shore, and the pier where they were headed towards. "Are you ready, Louis?" "Oh yeah, this is gonna be a blast!" They were both very nearly vibrating with anticipation now. They looked like two little boys who had just been promised ice cream. The ship pulled up to the pier, and the gangway was put in place. The pair grabbed their packs and sprinted off the ferry. They looked around, trying to figure out where to go. It didn't feel right. Something was off. "Louis?" "What?" "Where are all of the people?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, this is a pier. Aren't there supposed to be people on it? Tying ropes or loading the ship back up with Jaffa cakes or something?" "You're right. Are we even in the right town?" Louis turned back towards the ship just in time to see it sailing away. "Wait! No! Stop! Come back!" he shouted. But it was all in vain. He turned back towards Simon. "Brilliant! Now what are we going to do? The ferry just left, and there was no one here." He didn't get an answer. "Simon?" Simon was staring at something by the abandoned customs office. "Louis? I'm no expert, but that may or may not be a zombie over there." "What? Don't be ridiculous!" Simon's voice was getting louder now. "Shh, keep your voice down, idiot! And I would get your pistol out." Simon had already readied his and got into a crouch position. The creature was shuffling along, acting like it didn't know they were there. "My God, you're right again, Simon." Louis could tell now. The pier wasn't deserted. There were things there. They were mindlessly shuffling around in their torn-up, tattered rags. They were all zombies. All of our former lovers and friends and companions. All zombies. Like that one over there. Or that one. Or that one. Louis gestured to a few of the zombies shuffling on the pier. He jumped at the sudden sound of Simon's pistol going off. "Oh!" Simon muttered. He missed the undead he was aiming at, and started sprinting towards them in a bloodlust. "Save your ammo," Louis instructed Simon. "Only shoot when you know you're going to kill." The zombie had settled back down again. Simon let off 3 more shots, all missing. "Look, Simon, wait until you're nice and close, and then shoot them in the neck." Louis casually strolled up to the zombie and sent a bullet through its neck, dropping it instantly. "In the neck? That's horrible!" exclaimed Simon. "Well, or the head, and then you can loot them." "This one doesn't have anything," said Louis as he was rummaging through the pockets on the zombie he'd killed. "I'm crawling!" shouted Simon, like he had just discovered how to do so. "Hello, Louis!" Sure enough, Louis turned around to see Simon crawling up to him on his belly with a stupid grin on his face. "If you crawl or crouch, you make less noise, which is always good." Simon started crawling in circles. We can't survive forever, Simon. We're going to need lots of food, and we need to find water, and try to find any survivors out there in the wasteland. Lewis had accepted the reality of the post-apocalyptic Russia very quickly, and was determined to survive. How do we do that? How do we do any of that? Asked Simon, who was apparently completely baffled by the whole mess they had gotten themselves into. Well, right now we should search through bins and houses and take anything we might need. Try to survive. That is our top priority right now. Lewis walked up to a pair of trash cans up against a small, rectangular building. He tugged on the lids, trying to get them open, but they were both locked. I don't think we can get into these ones, he told Simon, who was about to lean up against the door. Suddenly there was a loud crash. As soon as Simon made contact with the door, the old, rusted hinges gave way. "Oh!" he exclaimed as he crashed to the floor. "Lewis, I'm in a building! I'm in a building!" The alarm was very apparent in Simon's voice. "How did you do that?" "I don't know. I went to lean on the door while I was waiting for you, and I just broke through." Simon stood up, dusting himself off. He picked up the door and leaned it against the wall. Lewis walked in through the empty doorway and saw the scattering of junk on the floor. "Is there anything useful in here? What's that there? Is that a can of pop?" Lewis was getting excited at the treasure Simon had accidentally come across. "Look, there's bandages on the floor. Perfect! This is exactly what we need!" Immediately, Lewis realized they didn't have enough space for everything they had just found. He took a couple of bandages and a can of soda and left the rest. There was a clang as Simon dropped a tin can to the ground, and then casually tossed a couple more of empty cans to the side. The two grabbed what little more they could, some road flares, a Lee Enfield magazine, and a chem light. The two of them walked outside through the double steel doors on the other side of the building, and immediately stopped. "Lewis, where do we go? It was cozy in there. I don't want to leave." "Well, it was cozy in there, and there was Pepsi." Lewis let his voice trail off as they both walked back inside their makeshift shelter. "Shall we close the door?" Lewis said. It was a rhetorical question. He was already closing the steel doors behind him. Simon took the door he broke that was leaning against the wall and wedged it back into place as best he could. Lewis was inspecting the run-down shack, and there was a long silence as they settled in for the night. "What happens if I shoot you?" Simon asked. Lewis couldn't get a response out before Simon pulled the trigger and sent a single bullet through the skull of his dearest friend. Lewis collapsed to the floor. "Oh God!" Simon shrieked. "Oh God!" He was in shock at what he had just done. I may have accidentally shot you in the head." Simon was talking to the corpse of his best friend like it was still Lewis, and could still hear him. "Oh God, that's disgusting!" At the sight of the brains all over the shack, and the blood still spewing from his friend, Simon could feel the beans he ate earlier trying to crawl their way back out of his stomach. He curled up in the fetal position and quietly cried himself to sleep that night. Simon awoke to the broken door of the shack being kicked to the floor, landing scant inches from his face. He grabbed his hatchet and held it at the ready. In the doorway, illuminated by the moonlight, was Lewis. "Oh my God, is that what I look like?" "How can you be back? I shot you! You're dead!" shouted Simon. This was all too much excitement for him. He'd had enough. "Where's my gun?" Lewis was acting like nothing had happened. It's like he got rejected from heaven and was immediately reincarnated. It's right over... Wait, no, it was an accident! Lewis started stripping his own corpse of everything it had. "Hang on, did you drink my Pepsi? I was really looking forward to that." Simon looked guilty and finally admitted to it. Yeah. You are an enormous jerk. You killed me and drank my can of Pepsi." Simon thought how crazy it was that his friend was more upset about losing his can of Pepsi than accidentally being shot in the face and killed. They settled down for the night in their abandoned shack. After wedging the door back in place, they attempted to go to sleep. In the morning, there was no breakfast. There was no tea. It was still overcast, and it was still a zombie apocalypse. The two roused themselves and set off out of the shack, following the road into town. "We should try and find better weapons and a better shelter." Lewis paused his list, and then added, "And a dog. We need a dog." Simon chewed over what his friend was saying and then asked, "Do we really need a dog? I mean, never mind." He waited a bit before attempting to convince Lewis of his own strategy for shelter. "I think "The best way to do it," started Simon, "is to have a series of canal boats tied up together, one with crops growing on it, one filled with fuel, and then one like a living quarters." "If we could do that," Lewis interrupted him. What film is that from?" "It's not from a film. It's from a post on Reddit." "Oh, well, why would canal boats be good? Can zombies not swim?" Simon replied, "They're afraid of water. That's why they're so dirty. They don't bathe. They're just like dirty people." Their ramblings to each other had passed the time quite well, and they were now on the outskirts of town. There was a field in front of them, and as they approached it, Lewis slowed down, trying to check it for zombies. Simon lay down and began to crawl through the field, leaving a trail of flattened grass wherever he crawled. Lewis laid down and followed suit, crawling through the field as quietly as possible. "Simon," he hissed, trying to keep his voice down, "there's a zombie right there. I'm going to see if I can get it." Lewis brought out his gun and held it up to his face. He aimed down the sights. Carefully, he squeezed on the trigger. He shot through the tall grass in the direction of the zombie. He couldn't tell if it had hit it, so he sent another shot downrange to make sure. He heard the soft thump as the body fell to the ground. "Oh, shit!" shouted Simon as another zombie sprinted through the field at him. Before it could do any damage to his friend, Lewis pumped 3 shots into that one as it fell. It landed on top of Simon, lifeless once more. "Are you all right?" asked Lewis. "That scared me," said Simon, pushing the corpse off of him as he stood up. "I didn't like that." Lewis took one look at the tattered, muddy clothes the dead bodies were wearing, and decided it wasn't worth looting them. He also didn't want to touch the rotting bodies, more than he had to. "Let's go," he told Simon, and they sprinted across the rest of the field. "What buildings should we look for if we're raiding them for supplies?" Simon thought for a moment. "A bank." "A bank?" asked Lewis. He wasn't expecting that answer. "Yeah, we rob it, take all the gold, and then—" Simon struggled to think of something. "And then I have no idea what we'd do with the gold because civilization has collapsed." "I suppose we'd be rich when civilization comes back and rebuilt itself in 100 years. But I was thinking more in the immediate purposes, like, guns, petrol." "Oh," muttered Simon. "Well, in that case, a petrol station or a hospital, maybe a fire station." Their conversation was interrupted by a noise in the distance. "What was that, Lewis?" "I don't know, but I hear it too." They ran to a house and closed the door behind them. "Oh, this is lovely," said Simon while admiring the decor. His admiration was cut short as a silhouette of something ran by the window. There was a banging at the front door. An arm smashed through a few of the boards and tried to grab them. "Oh, God!" screamed Simon as he emptied a clip into the door. The arm went limp. "Simon, you're bleeding. Bandage yourself." Simon hadn't even felt the claws rake his arm. There were a few gashes on his bicep, but nothing major. He pulled out one of his precious bandages and wrapped up the wound. "That should stop the bleeding," Lewis told him when he was finished. There was more hacking at the door, and the hole widened. Lewis shot the zombie on the other side. The bullet nicked its hand, but it was still enough to send it back to death. There was starting to be a pile of corpses on the other side of the doorway. "There we go," said Simon. "I've blocked up the door." He had put a piece of plywood that was laying around over the hole to cover it. The two of them backed up and started to relax. Out of nowhere, a zombie slammed its way through the plywood on the door and stumbled into the room. Simon let out a blood-curdling shriek, and both he and Lewis unloaded their guns into the thing. They barely had time to reload before another one appeared, and they shot that one too. "How are they getting through that?" They could still hear rustling on the other side of the wall. It wasn't trying to get in, but they knew a zombie was there. Simon sent one bullet through the wall where it sounded like the noise was coming from. Then there was silence. No more rustling, no more moaning, just silence. Lewis carefully opened the door and peered out. It looked safe. He examined the pile of bodies when something struck his eye. He smiled as he picked it up. "Simon, I found a can of sardines on one of the zombies. These things can last up to 5 years if stored correctly. Oh, and look at a can of baked beans. I'm getting all of the treasure." "What the hell, man?" whined Simon, more than a little jealous. His stomach growled at the thought of food. "I found a can of beans. That's spot on. It's just what we need." "Why didn't the house have any food?" Simon was still complaining, not wanting to stay in one place, and with the pile of bodies starting to reek. They set on their journey again. "This looks like some sort of town," said Lewis. "I suggest we make our way through the tallest building. There's usually some good stuff in there." Oh, balls! The zombie was chasing Simon again, and Lewis, as usual, shot it down. "We're going to have to fight our way there." A horde of zombies was running down the street towards them. They both began shooting into the crowd. They weren't killing them fast enough. Lewis shot down one zombie in front of him and turned to see one on Simon. He shot that one down too. He had to reload right as the rest of the horde was arriving at his feet. Lewis knew there was no way he was going to kill them all. Then, from the field off to their left, a barrage of fire was rained down on the zombies, dropping all of them in their tracks. Then, a ghillie suit stood up out of the grass and walked toward Lewis. It took a moment, but Lewis recognized it as their childhood friend, Ridge. He didn't say much. He just started looting the corpses and bandaging himself. "It's okay, Simon, it's just Ridge. I guess we're being chaperoned by a sniper, but that's cool. Also, I'm bleeding, but not badly." Lewis calmly bandaged himself. Simon sat up and stared at Lewis. "You idiot! You shot me!" He was not happy, but he did realize he had done the same thing to Lewis the day before. "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I did not shoot you!" "He's right, the zombie got you," growled Ridge. Simon didn't try to argue his point any further. They found a house, set up camp, and stayed there until they were ready to set out again.